Duan Ling Tian glanced at the two disciples of the demonic Lotus Blade sect kneeling on the ground and said indifferently, "My seven-star sword sect does not accept traitors. If you can betray the demonic Lotus Blade sect today, you can betray my seven-star sword sect tomorrow." Lord Duan Ling Tian. Just when Duan Ling Tian thought these two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples would retreat, they remained persistent, even pricking their fingers and sending a drop of blood soaring into the sky. "I swear by my own blood that if Lord Duan Ling Tian is willing to accept me into the seven-star sword sect, I will coexist and perish with the seven-star sword sect, never betraying it. If I violate this oath, I am willing to be struck down by the 99 Thunder Tribulation." The two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples made their vows in unison. At this moment, deafening thunderclaps echoed from the horizon, clearly indicating that the 99 Thunder Tribulation, the tribulation of oaths, was witnessing their blood oath. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow. Everything before him was beyond his expectation. He never imagined that these two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples would be so persistent, even swearing by the 99 Thunder Tribulation. For a moment, he couldn't help but hesitate. To be honest, he subconsciously rejected these demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples, not for any other reason than his hatred for the demonic Lotus Blade sect. "Mou, what do you think?" Duan Ling Tian looked at Mou and asked. For the seven-star sword sect, he was merely a passerby. Mou was the future leader of the seven-star sword sect, and its future rested entirely on his shoulders. Mou pondered for a moment. "Senior brother, since they have already sworn by the 99 Thunder Tribulation, they will surely not have any ulterior motives towards our seven-star sword sect. Now that the seven-star sword sect is being rebuilt, it is a time when we need people. I think we can accept them as disciples of the seven-star sword sect." "All right, then let's do as you say." Duan Ling Tian nodded. "Thank you, Lord Mou." The two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples quickly said, "Humph." However, Duan Ling Tian's cold snort made them feel as if they were sitting on pins and needles. Remember this. While the two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples were feeling uneasy, Duan Ling Tian said indifferently, "He is the sect master of the seven-star sword sect." "Thank you, sect master." Upon hearing this, although the two demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples were curious as to why Duan Ling Tian wasn't the sect master of the seven-star sword sect, they dared not show any disrespect and hastily thanked Mou again. "Senior brother, I think you are more suitable to be the sect master of the seven-star sword sect," Mou said with a wry smile. "With my current cultivation at the void prying stage, how can I shoulder the great responsibility of the seven-star sword sect master? With peak master Qin Xiang and Elder Peng helping you, why can't you?" Duan Ling Tian was non-committal, stating resolutely, "This matter is settled. You are sect master Ling Hu's personal disciple and also his designated successor for the next generation of seven-star sword sect master. The position of seven-star sword sect master belongs to no one but you. As for me, I won't be staying in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in the future." Duan Ling Tian added at the end, "Mou, the heavy burden of the seven-star sword sect is entrusted to you. I hope you won't disappoint your master." Duan Ling Tian said to Mou earnestly, "Senior brother, don't worry, I will definitely work hard." Mou quickly said, "Lord Duan Ling Tian, sect master Mou, we are also willing to join the seven-star sword sect." At this moment, seeing their two fellow disciples swear an oath and join the seven-star sword sect, the remaining disciples of the demonic Lotus Blade sect also hastily knelt down, simultaneously swearing by the 99 Thunder Tribulation. As for the content of their oaths, it was almost identical to the oaths of the two previous demonic Lotus Blade sect disciples. For a time, thunderclaps rumbled across the sky, deafeningly loud. Although making such an oath meant they could never betray the seven-star sword sect and had to coexist and perish with it, they had no regrets. When they had joined the Azure Forest 3 sects, it was mostly to seek powerful backing and to make a name for themselves. Now, with the Azure Forest 3 sects gone, an even more powerful seven-star sword sect stood before them. Therefore, they chose to join the seven-star sword sect, seeking a better future. MOU, you handle things here. Peak Master Qin Xiang, Elder Pong, MOU is still young. Please guide him more in the future. Duanling Tian said to MOU, then looked at Qin Xiang and Elder Pong. Qin Xiang and Elder Pong both nodded. Don't worry, MOU is the sect master of the Seven-Star Sword sect, and I am his martial uncle. I will naturally do my best to assist him in becoming a qualified sect master. Qin Xiang said, all right. Duanling Tian nodded, then said, since that's the case, we'll take our leave first. Senior brother, where are you going? Upon hearing that Duanling Tian was leaving, MOU couldn't help but ask, I'll scout around to see if there are any remaining remnants of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. Then, I'll return to my hometown. After I come back from my hometown, I'll return to our Seven-Star Sword sect stronghold. Duanling Tian said, Senior brother, the 9 spiritual veins in our Seven-Star Sword sect stronghold have all been destroyed. It will take a long time for the heaven and earth origin energy to accumulate again. Should we move our stronghold to demonic Lotus Valley and also to the strongholds that originally belonged to the Origin Gathering sect and the Snow Moon sect? MOU couldn't help but ask, no need. Duanling Tian shook his head. Our Seven-Star Sword sect stronghold will still be at the 7 Great Sword Peaks. Just bring all of them back. Also, after you return, summon Senior Brother Zheng Song and the Seven-Star Sword sect disciples who are scattered outside. After I return from my hometown, I will find a way to transfer the remaining spiritual veins in demonic Lotus Valley, as well as the spiritual veins in the strongholds that originally belonged to the Origin Gathering sect and the Snow Moon sect, to our Seven-Star Sword sect stronghold. Duanling Tian finished in one breath. Transfer spiritual veins. Duanling Tian's words not only stunned MOU, Qin Xiang, Elder Pong, and the group of Seven-Star Sword sect disciples who had just joined, but even Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong couldn't help but be taken aback. Senior brother, can you really transfer spiritual veins? MOU took a deep breath and couldn't help but ask that in his opinion. This was truly incredible. Duanling Tian nodded. Then his gaze sharpened, and he moved swiftly, collecting the spatial rings from the former demonic Lotus Blade sect. Master Long Wei, Origin Gathering sect Master Lu Yuan, and Snow Moon sect Master Shuero one by one after dripping blood to recognize their ownership. He took out the Origin Guiding Beads from within, a total of 18. I never thought that Long Wei could find so many Origin Guiding Beads. These Origin Guiding Beads are considered rare even in the outer domain. After Duanling Tian collected the Origin Guiding Beads, he released the ownership of the 3 spatial rings and threw them to MOU. You can collect the remaining spoils of war. We'll be leaving first. After Duanling Tian finished speaking, he greeted Feng Wudao and the other 2, and the 4 of them flew out, circling the demonic Lotus Valley. Following some clues, after eliminating some remnants who had recently left demonic Lotus Valley, the 4 continued southward. Whoosh! A giant sword streaked across the sky, carrying Duanling Tian and the 3 others. In just one day, they arrived above the imperial city of the Crimson Firmament Kingdom. Duanling Tian quietly looked down at the city below. Although, in the eyes of the now well-traveled Duanling Tian, the imperial city of the Crimson Firmament Kingdom was no different from a small rural town in the Great Han Dynasty. It was precisely this small rural town that stirred waves in his heart, the feeling of nearing one's hometown and feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension described Duanling Tian perfectly. At this moment, 4 years had passed since he last left the Crimson Firmament Kingdom. It's been 4 years. I wonder how father and mother are doing. With excited emotions, Duanling Tian and the other 3 landed outside the imperial city. They did not directly fly in according to Feng Tianwu. This way they could better integrate into it. Of course, the reason she thought this was because it was Duanling Tian's hometown, and she wanted to understand Duanling Tian's hometown. Aside from Duanling Tian, who was too caught up in his emotions of nearing home to hear the deeper meaning in Feng Tianwu's words, Feng Wudao and Elder Kong both guessed Feng Tianwu's thoughts, especially Elder Kong, whose peculiar gaze made Feng Tianwu's pretty face flush crimson, and she frequently glared at Elder Kong, as if threatening him not to speak out. The imperial city of the Crimson Firmament Kingdom was divided into an outer city and an inner city. Walking into the outer city and feeling the bustling atmosphere of the streets and alleys, Duan Lingtian felt as if he had returned to the time when he first left Aurora City and arrived at the imperial city. It must be said that Duan Lingtian and the other three were lucky. After they had eaten in the outer city, the inner city gate had already slowly opened. Of course, even if the inner city hadn't opened, they could have flown in directly. However, that feeling was completely different from walking in. Before long, Duan Lingtian and the other three slowly walked into the inner city. Young master, look, quick, look. My goodness, in all my life, I've never seen such a beauty. Although I haven't seen our imperial city's #1 beauty, Princess Biao. I'm sure she's absolutely no worse than Princess Biao. In the distance, a servant riding a horse beside a richly dressed young man on a tall steed stared with shining eyes at Duan Lingtian and the three others walking towards them. To be precise, he was staring at Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu was not wearing a veil as she used to, and her stunningly beautiful face attracted many fervent gazes along the way. However, the extraordinary aura inadvertently exuded by Duan Lingtian, Feng Wudao, and Elder Kong, who were accompanying Feng Tianwu, kept some eager suitors at bay. The richly dressed young man heard this and followed his servant's gaze. With just one look, his eyes could no longer move away. Heavens, could there truly be such a beauty in the world? Shaming flowers and eclipsing the moon, sinking fish and attracting geese. These phrases were insufficient to describe the woman before him, who possessed a beauty that could topple nations. The woman's perfection made his heart race suddenly. That a strong sense of possessiveness spread through his heart. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu walked side by side. Now, his mood had calmed down, and he walked along the street, chatting and laughing with Feng Tianwu. Mississippi, a sudden voice interrupted Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's leisurely conversation. Immediately after, a tall horse blocked Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's path. The richly dressed young man on the horse was staring at Feng Tianwu with a greedy gaze full of possessiveness. Feeling the youth in brocade's undisguised gaze. Feng Tianwu's smiling face instantly frosted over. Deep within her beautiful, pearl-like autumn eyes, threads of anger flickered. Miss, we seem to have a natural affinity. How about we go for a cup of tea? The brocade-clad youth brazenly scrutinized Feng Tianwu from head to toe. Her nearly perfect, slender figure intensified the greed in his eyes. He was practically on the verge of forcibly taking her. As for these three beside you make sure to entertain these three guests well for my young master. Don't neglect them, understand? As the brocade-clad youth spoke, he looked at his servant. Yes, young master. The servant seemed accustomed to this. After responding, he rode his horse forward, looked at Duan Lingtian, Feng Wudao, and Old Kong, and said indifferently, "The three of you, follow me." Scram. Just then, Feng Tianwu, her pretty face covered in a layer of cold frost, finally spoke. Her voice was icy, as if it had chilled the surrounding air by several degrees. The servant, who had been arrogant moments before, couldn't help but freeze. The brocade-clad youth, however, his eyes brightening considerably, couldn't help but laugh. It's been a long time since I've met such a captivating woman. Miss, I'm truly growing more and more fond of you. I told you to scram, didn't you hear? Just as the air around Feng Tianwu's body rapidly stirred and her elemental energy was on the verge of erupting, Duan Lingtian stepped forward, gently held her hand, calming her anger, and said languidly, "Brat, I'm talking to this young lady. What are you interrupting for? If it weren't for her sake, do you believe I'd make sure you couldn't speak again?" The brocade-clad youth's face darkened. He glared at Duan Lingtian with malicious eyes, his words full of menace. Humph. Even a clay figure has a temper. Faced with the brocade-clad youth's repeated provocations and harassment, Duan Lingtian's face darkened. He took a step forward and casually threw a punch. The punch struck the air in an instant. The airflow in the air was compressed, and a terrifying wave of air surged forward. Bang! A piercing air explosion sounded. The tall horse the brocade-clad youth was riding remained motionless. But the brocade-clad youth himself was sent flying more than 10 meters, crashing heavily to the ground in a humiliating sprawl. The surrounding passers-by, witnessing this scene, couldn't help but laugh. The disheveled brocade-clad youth cried out in pain. Hearing the laughter of the passers-by, he looked at Duan Ling Tian, his face ashen. "You dared to hit me. No matter who you are, you're dead." Meanwhile, the servant's face also changed drastically. He dismounted in a panic and rushed towards the brocade-clad youth. "Young master, are you all right? Let's go." Duan Ling Tian, as if nothing had happened, smiled and said to Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu nodded, equally unfazed by the brocade-clad youth's threat. In this small kingdom, there was no one who could threaten her existence. Duan Ling Tian and the other three continued walking into the inner city. Their destination was Duan Ling Tian's private residence in the inner city. They walked for about half an hour. "It's him. Cousin, he's the one who hurt me." A furious voice came from behind Duan Ling Tian and the other three. The brocade-clad youth, who had suffered at Duan Ling Tian's hands earlier, had ridden his horse to catch up. Beside him, on another tall horse, sat another elegantly dressed youth in his early 30s. The elegantly dressed youth had a stern face, showing no joy or anger, exuding an invisible sense of pressure. Behind him, another old man, well past 70, followed. The old man's face was as calm as still water, trailing behind the elegantly dressed youth like a shadow in a flash. The two youths and the old man rode their horses to block Duan Ling Tian and the other three, stopping them at this moment. Many more passers-by stopped to watch. It's the third young master of the Su clan. Many people recognized the elegantly dressed youth. Third young master of the Su clan? Duan Ling Tian's calm gaze fell upon the elegantly dressed youth. A cold curve, filled with mockery, had appeared on his lips at some point he hadn't expected. The brocade-clad youth he had just taught a lesson to have connections with the Su clan. Now, seeing the onlookers recognize the elegantly dressed youth, the brocade-clad youth's face filled with triumph. Sitting atop his tall horse, he looked down at Duan Ling Tian. "Brat, you dared to hit me. Today you're dead." At this point, the brocade-clad youth looked at Feng Tianwu beside Duan Ling Tian and changed his tone. "Of course, if she's willing to become my third concubine, I don't mind sparing your life, only crippling your cultivation. You're asking for death." Feng Tianwu's eyes turned cold, and she was about to strike directly, intending to completely obliterate this annoying brocade-clad youth. However, a tall figure suddenly stood in front of her, preventing her from acting. "For the moment, only cripple my cultivation." Stepping forward to stand in front of Feng Tianwu, Duan Ling Tian observed the purple-clad youth before him with interest, a sarcastic smile playing on his lips. "So, you consider this showing mercy?" Naturally, the brocade-clad youth seemed oblivious to the impending crisis. He proudly raised his head. "If it weren't for her, I would tear you to pieces and throw you to the dogs. I hope your Su clan gives me a satisfactory explanation. Otherwise, I'll have to personally visit Su Boya for a chat." Duan Ling Tian's sarcastic smile deepened upon hearing the brocade-clad youth's words. His gaze suddenly shifted, falling upon the old man riding his horse behind the other elegantly dressed youth. And that old man, upon seeing Duan Ling Tian, had already rubbed his eyes, as if wanting to confirm whether he was seeing things in a flash. Duan Ling Tian's sudden remark, coupled with his gaze towards him, made the old man completely certain. It really is him. The old man's heart trembled. He had met this purple-clad youth many years ago, and that time, he was following their Su clan's patriarch, Su Boya. However, compared to back then, the purple-clad youth's face had lost some of its youthful immaturity and gained a touch of world-weariness, giving him a sense of maturity and steadiness. It was precisely because of this that he hadn't immediately confirmed the other party's identity. Now, with the other party suddenly uttering such a remark and looking at him, he knew that the other party still remembered him and had recognized him. "Who are you? How dare you call my father by his given name?" The elegantly dressed youth frowned, looking at Duan Ling Tian, and asked in a deep voice, "Third young master." At this moment, the old man behind the elegantly dressed youth grew anxious. He hurriedly transmitted his elemental energy to say, He is Commander Duan." "Commander Duan? Which Commander Duan? The elegantly dressed youth frowned. The embroidered uniform guard. The old man took a deep breath and slowly transmitted these three words with his elemental energy. The embroidered uniform guard, Commander Duan. The elegantly dressed youth's heart couldn't help but skip a beat when he heard the words embroidered. Uniform guard. When he connected the embroidered uniform guard with Commander Duan, his face completely changed. It's him. It's actually him. Didn't he just leave 4 years ago? Why is he back again? Although he had never seen the person in front of him with his own eyes, the person's reputation was well known to him. In fact, even if this person killed him in the street, his family wouldn't dare to retaliate. Even his father, the Sioux clan's patriarch, wouldn't dare to hold a grudge. What a joke. Aside from his monstrously unparalleled martial arts talent and incredibly astonishing background, this person was also a disciple of a powerful sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Brat, you dared to call my maternal uncle by his given name. You're asking for death. Suddenly, a sharp shout came, causing the elegantly dressed youth's face to change drastically. Whoosh. Almost the instant the brocade-clad youth beside him finished speaking, the elegantly dressed youth had already slapped him, leaving a red mark on the brocade-clad youth's face with a paw sound. The brocade-clad youth was stunned. The onlookers were also dumbfounded. What kind of show was this? Feng Tianwu, Feng Wudao, and Old Kong were also surprised by the scene before them. Cousin, you hit the wrong person. It was him. He called maternal uncle by his name. The brocade-clad youth shook his somewhat dizzy head, looked at the elegantly dressed youth, and said anxiously, "Slap?" However, before he could finish speaking, he received another slap. Cousin. The brocade-clad youth was somewhat clear-headed now, realizing he might have caused trouble. Before he could ask for clarification, the elegantly dressed youth picked him up like an eagle snatching a chick and threw him off the horse. Immediately after, the elegantly dressed youth also dismounted. Kneel. Seeing the brocade-clad youth, who had fallen to the ground in a sorry state, about to stand up, the elegantly dressed youth's eyes turned cold. He kicked out, sending the brocade-clad youth sprawling at Duan Ling Tian's feet. Cousin, the brocade-clad youth lay face down, dizzy and disoriented. He turned his head, as if wanting to ask something again. Slap? Another slap landed, turning his face into a pig's head. Kneel. This time, the brocade-clad youth was completely jolted awake, realizing that he might have truly caused a colossal disaster. Although he was unwilling, he still obediently knelt down. Just as the brocade-clad youth felt wronged and didn't know what was happening, he was horrified to see again his cousin, the third young master of the Sioux clan, the heir apparent to the next generation of the Sioux clan's patriarch, actually bowed before the purple-clad youth whom he had just threatened to tear to pieces. Commander Duan. After bowing, the elegantly dressed youth respectfully saluted Duan Ling Tian. Commander Duan. Hearing the elegantly dressed youth's words, the brocade-clad youth was stunned, then couldn't help but whisper, Cousin, you must have mistaken him for someone else. In his opinion, there was no such young commander in the Scarlet Heaven Kingdom. Slap? Another slap, making the brocade-clad youth dizzy. If you say another word, I'll rip your mouth off immediately. The elegantly dressed youth's voice came, scaring the brocade-clad youth, who trembled and obediently shut his mouth, but his heart was filled with terror. Who exactly is this guy? Why is even cousin afraid of him? You are Su Boya's son? Duan Ling Tian glanced indifferently at the elegantly dressed youth. Yes. The richly dressed young man hurriedly nodded and said respectfully, Commander Duan, I am Su Rang, the third son of Su Boya, the patriarch of the Sioux clan. I remember now. He's Duan Ling Tian, the former commander of the embroidered uniform guard in our Red Cloud Kingdom. Among the onlookers, someone shouted. His words were like a fuse, causing a stir in the crowd. I remember too. Commander, Duan is the greatest martial arts genius in the history of our Red Cloud Kingdom, and also a strategic genius who once led our Red Cloud Kingdom's army to capture Nanman City in the southern Zhao Kingdom without losing a single soldier. Now that you mention it, I remember too. I was only 15 when Commander Duan led his army to capture Nanman City. I didn't expect Commander Duan to still be so young after all these years. Don't forget, when Duan Ling Tian led his army to break through Nanman City. He was only a young man around 20 years old. Commander Duan is my idol. I never thought I'd have the chance to meet my idol in person today. My life is complete. The onlookers discussed animatedly that a series of fervent gazes fell on Duan Ling Tian. Back then, Duan Ling Tian was a rising star in the Red Cloud Kingdom. Not only was his martial arts talent unparalleled, but his military strategies were also unmatched. In that era, Duan Ling Tian could be said to be a banner for the Red Cloud Kingdom. Duan Ling Tian? He's Duan Ling Tian. The richly dressed young man, who was still kneeling on the ground, now looked up. When he looked at Duan Ling Tian again, his face was no longer arrogant, but filled with panic and shock. The name Duan Ling Tian was not unfamiliar to him at all. In fact, when Duan Ling Tian became famous throughout the Red Cloud Kingdom, he, as a young boy, had also regarded Duan Ling Tian as an idol and had been obsessed for a period of time. But over the years, as he grew older, this memory had been buried deep in his heart. Now, his former idol was right in front of him, and he had insulted him so much he wished he could die. How do you plan to explain today's incident to me and my friend? If you can't make the decision, I can go have a good talk with your father. Duan Ling Tian looked at Su Rang and asked indifferently. Su Rang took a deep breath upon hearing this. Commander Duan, rest assured, I will give you a satisfactory explanation. There's no need to trouble my father with this matter. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Rang kicked out like lightning, his leg striking the dantian of the richly dressed young man who was kneeling on the ground. Bang! With a loud thud, the milky white vital energy in the richly dressed young man's dantian surged out, and he was sent flying like an arrow from a bow by Su Rang's kick, landing in an undignified heap once more. His cultivation was directly crippled. Cousin, you crippled my cultivation. The richly dressed young man screamed in pain a few times, then endured the pain in his lower abdomen and glared at Su Rang with hatred, crying out in a sharp, mournful voice. However, Su Rang ignored him and instead looked at Duan Ling Tian, saying respectfully, Commander Duan, are you satisfied with my handling? If you're still not satisfied, I'll kill him right now. Su Rang's tone was cold, and his words made it sound as if the richly dressed young man had no relation to him whatsoever. It was hard to imagine that Su Rang and the richly dressed young man were cousins. Are quite good. At least, in my opinion, you're stronger than Su Boya. Duan Ling Tian gave Su Rang a deep look, feeling a surge of admiration for Su Rang's courage. After all, that was his cousin. As the saying goes, even a tiger won't eat its cub. Regardless of Su Rang's other abilities, his crisis management skills alone were enough to command respect. But today's incident seemed simple, just a profligate young master causing trouble. But when considering the deeper implications, with his current strength and background, it would be no difficult task to wipe out the Su clan. And Su Rang's ability to make the choice to sacrifice a rook to save the king at the most critical moment showed that he was an extremely calm and resourceful person. Commander Duan, you flatter me. Praised by Duan Ling Tian, Su Rang's expression remained unchanged. Then, Commander Duan, what do you mean? Whatever my friend means, I mean the same. Duan Ling Tian shrugged, stepped back, and brought Feng Tianwu forward from behind him. This. Su Rang looked at Feng Tianwu, a hint of surprise in his eyes, but he dared not look too long and slightly lowered his head. His heart was filled with shock as far as he knew. This Duan Ling Tian was Princess Bai Yao's beloved. In addition, Xiao Yu's sister, the top young talent of the Xiao clan, whose beauty was no less than Princess Bai Yao's, also seemed to have a special affection for Duan Ling Tian. That he had met Princess Bai Yao and Xiao Yu's sister, and he was amazed by their beauty, thinking that it would be difficult to find women more beautiful than them in the world. But now, the woman before him made him realize how wrong his initial thoughts were. This woman in a red dress was not only as beautiful as Princess Bai Yao and Xiao Yu's sister, but her temperament was also clearly superior. He felt that the aura of this woman in red was even more elegant than Princess Bai Yao's. Tian Wu, how do you want to deal with him? Duan Ling Tian's face showed a gentle smile when he faced Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu shook her head. Brother Duan, Since his cultivation has already been crippled, let's leave it at that. Clearly, Feng Tianwu had no intention of pursuing the matter further. Still not coming over to thank her. Su Rang breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Feng Tianwu's words. Although, if it came down to a last resort, he would choose to cut off a limb to save the body and personally kill his cousin. But if it wasn't necessary, he still hoped his cousin could live well. After all, this was his cousin, who had followed him since childhood, and they shared a deep bond. At this moment, the richly dressed young man, whose cultivation had been crippled, seemed to realize that the danger had passed. Upon hearing Su Rang's words, he did not hesitate and hurriedly dragged his injured body to kneel before Feng Tianwu. Slap, 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 slap. The richly dressed young man raised both hands and slapped himself repeatedly, saying as he hit, "Thank you, miss, for sparing my life. Thank you, miss, for sparing my life." Feng Tianwu looked at the richly dressed young man with disgust, then quickly shifted her gaze to Duan Ling Tian, smiling slightly. "Brother Duan, let's go." Her heart was filled with warmth at how Duan Ling Tian had stood up for her. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and under the respectful gaze of Su Rang and the group, he and the 3 members of the Feng family departed, disappearing at the end of the street. All right, they've already left. Seeing Duan Ling Tian and the others disappear from sight, the richly dressed young man was still numbly slapping himself. Su Rang frowned and stopped him. I know you're angry with me, but I want to tell you, today, you either had your cultivation crippled or you would die. Just now, I was just gambling, hoping that your cultivation would appease Duan Ling Tian's anger. Su Rang looked at his cousin and sighed. "Don't blame me." The richly dressed young man nodded dully and said bitterly, "Cousin, I understand. Today's matter was indeed my own fault. It's good that you understand." Su Rang nodded, then his eyes flashed. "I didn't expect Duan Ling Tian to be back." When Duan Ling Tian brought the 3 members of the Feng family back to his residence, he only saw a few familiar faces, the maids who used to be by Jing Ru's side. "Young master." Seeing Duan Ling Tian again, the maids couldn't help but feel a little excited. Duan Ling Tian smiled slightly at them, then asked, "Why are there only a few of you? Where are father, mother, and Jingru?" "Young master, master and madam left with Sister Jingru 2 years ago. Sister Jingru asked us to stay and tell you about it when you returned." One of the maids said, "Young master, before master left, he asked us to tell you that he left some things for you with Marquis Shenwei, for you to retrieve yourself." Another maid said, "Left? 2 years ago." Duan Ling Tian frowned. "Have my father and mother not returned in these 2 years?" "No." The maids all shook their heads. 2 years ago, when master and madam left with Sister Jingru, as well as Miss Xiaolan and Princess Bai Yao, it seemed they were going on a long journey and didn't say when they would return. Xiaolan and Bai Yao were taken with them, too. Duan Ling Tian's expression froze, and for a moment, he felt a headache. What were his father and mother trying to do? If they wanted to go out and relax, they could just go out themselves. Why did they have to take Xiaolan and Bai Yao with them? Wasn't that just asking for misunderstandings? Duan Ling Tian was a little speechless. He wasn't particularly disappointed about not seeing his parents this time. In fact, he felt a hint of relief. Of course, the reason for his relief was because of Feng Wu Dao, who was with him. Feng Wu Dao had come with him this time precisely to meet his parents. As for the purpose, he knew it clearly. It was for his and Tian Wu's matter. Indeed, upon hearing that Duan Ling Tian's parents had gone on a long journey, a hint of disappointment flashed in Feng Wu Dao's eyes, and he sighed. "It seems I truly came at an inopportune time. There will always be a chance to meet later," Duan Ling Tian said with a smile, but his smile now looked rather forced. "You brat, you must be hoping I don't get to see your parents, right?" Feng Wu Dao gave Duan Ling Tian a deep look, as if he could see through Duan Ling Tian's thoughts. "Not at all." Duan Ling Tian gave an awkward smile, then didn't dwell on the matter, instructing the maids, "Go prepare a room for each of the 3 guests." "Yes." The 3 maids responded and left, and in a moment, they had prepared a room for each of Feng Wu Dao and the other 2. "Uncle Feng, Tian Wu, Old Kong. Since the rooms are ready, You should go rest first. I still have something to do and need to go out. In the pavilion in the backyard, Duan Ling Tian stood up, greeted Feng Wu Dao and the other two, then left his residence. After leaving his own residence, Duan Ling Tian headed towards the divine Might Marquis estate that he hadn't forgotten what the maid had told him earlier. What did father leave with Uncle Nya? Driven by curiosity, Duan Ling Tian arrived at the divine Might Marquis estate. Although the guards at the main entrance of the divine Might Marquis estate were all unfamiliar faces, after Duan Ling Tian revealed his identity, and they had a veteran guard of the estate verify his identity, they respectfully welcomed Duan Ling Tian inside. You can go back to your duties. I'll go find Uncle Nya myself. Seeing that the main hall of the divine Might Marquis estate was empty, Duan Ling Tian told the guard who had welcomed him in, and then headed alone towards the courtyard where the divine Might Marquis Yuan resided. Just as he arrived outside the courtyard, Duan Ling Tian heard a familiar voice coming from inside. However, the voice was now somewhat low and dull. Father, at worst, we can just have Mother step down as the sect leader. She's also getting old. It's a good time for her to come back and enjoy life and hold her grandson. Duan Ling Tian could tell that it was his Uncle Nya's voice. Uncle Nya seems very angry. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, pondering Nya Yuan's words. Uncle Nya's mother is still the master of a sect? Could her sect also be a sect of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Although Duan Ling Tian had never met Nya Yuan's mother, he had heard of her long ago. Back then, when he first arrived in the imperial city of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, his first visit to the divine Might Marquis estate was to detoxify the old Marquis, to cure the poison of the dark nether sable. Before the detoxification, he had heard the old Marquis mentioned that the reason he was poisoned by the dark nether sable was because of a spirit fruit guarded by the dark nether sable, and that spirit fruit was something needed by his wife, who was also the mother of divine Might Marquis Nya Yuan. That if she couldn't get the spirit fruit, his wife would be in big trouble that time. Duan Ling Tian knew that the old Marquis's wife, who was also the mother of divine Might Marquis Nya Yuan, was still alive, but not in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Now, hearing Nya Yuan's words, he guessed that Nya Yuan's mother should be the master of a sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, or a sect in another imperial kingdom that asked for the empire, or even the Great Han Dynasty. Duan Ling Tian didn't dare to think about it. It wasn't realistic. Grandson? Big brother Nya has married and had children. In addition, Duan Ling Tian also caught another piece of information from Nya Yuan's words and couldn't help but brighten his eyes. Just then, another old and aged voice continued to come. I told your mother, and she's also willing to step down from her heavy responsibilities. However, those old guys said that if she really wants to leave the sect, she must abolish her cultivation. Not only that, but she must also pass the test of climbing the mountain of knives and descending into the sea of fire before she can leave the sect. Duan Ling Tian could tell that it was the old Marquis's voice. Bang! Almost as soon as the old Marquis finished speaking, a loud noise came from the courtyard, and through the small window on the courtyard wall, Duan Ling Tian could see Nya Yuan smashing a stone table with a palm. Too much. Those old guys, when Mother first took over as sect leader, they kept making trouble for her. It wasn't until Mother took the spirit fruit and her cultivation greatly increased that they restrained themselves a little. This time, Mother was injured for the sake of the sect, and not only are they not grateful, but they are forcing Mother to abdicate. They deserve to die. Nya Yuan was very angry. Grandpa Nya, Uncle Nya. Duan Ling Tian stepped to the front of the courtyard gate and greeted them with a smile. Little Tian, when did you come back? Hearing Duan Ling Tian's voice, the two people in the courtyard were first stunned, and Nya Yuan was the first to react, welcoming Duan Ling Tian in with a look of surprised this moment. Where was the angry look he had? Just had? Of course, Duan Ling Tian could see that although Nya Yuan was happy because of his return, in the depths of his eyes, there was still an uncontrollable anger. I just got back. I heard the maid say that before my father went on a long trip, he left some things with you, Uncle Nya, so I came over. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. You kid, is it that if your father didn't leave anything with me, you wouldn't have thought of coming to see Uncle Nya? Nie Yuan scolded with a smile, but a kind expression appeared on his face. Of course not. Duan Lingtian hurriedly shook his head. Take it. This is the spatial ring that your father asked me to give you before he left. With a wave of his hand, Nie Yuan handed a spatial ring to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian put away the spatial ring, not looking at it in detail for the time being, but looked at Nie Yuan and the old man beside him. Uncle Nie, Grandpa Nie, you seem to have encountered some trouble. Little Tian, it's rare for you to come back. You don't need to worry about our affairs. The old Marquis was still as amiable as before. Grandpa Nie. Duan Lingtian's face turned serious, and he said seriously, in my eyes, you and Uncle Nie are both my family, and naturally I can't stand by when my family is in trouble, unless you treat me as an outsider. Alas, how could we treat you as an outsider? It's just that this matter is too troublesome, and it's not something you can solve. The old Marquis sighed. Asterisk. Yes, little Tian, don't worry about this matter. Nie? Yuan also said, it's rare for you to come back. You should be happy. Don't let other things affect your mood. Grandpa Nie, Uncle Nie, just tell me. Maybe I can help. Duan Lingtian insisted. Seeing Duan Lingtian so insistent, the divine might Marquis father and son looked at each other, nodded, and began to tell Duan Lingtian the ins and outs of the matter. Soon, Duan Lingtian had a certain understanding of the matter. It turned out that Nie Yuan's mother used to be a disciple of a second-rate sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. When she was young, she met the old Marquis and married the old Marquis, who was then the divine might Marquis, and had a son, Nie Yuan. And Nie Yuan's mother, because of her excellent martial arts talent, had always been valued by the old sect leader of that sect, who even regarded her as the next generation sect leader successor, and even didn't care that she had secretly married and had children outside. That sect had an unwritten rule. All sect leaders and sect leader successors must cut off their 7 emotions and 6 desires, and must not marry or have children, because that way they can ensure that they can dedicate their lives selflessly to the sect. What a load of crap. After hearing this rule, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but curse inwardly, feeling that that crap sect was too selfish, and an unwritten rule would ruin a person's life. A life without a partner or children is undoubtedly incomplete. And soon, as the old sect leader passed away, Nie Yuan's mother naturally became the sect leader. But some of the older generation elders who couldn't stand it were making things difficult for her everywhere. Back then, the old Marquis was poisoned by the dark nether sable for a spirit fruit, and it was because he obtained that spirit fruit that he helped his wife improve her cultivation. And after his wife took the spirit fruit, her strength greatly increased, suppressing a group of older generation elders in the sect, and from then on, it was much calmer. Even when the old Marquis went to live in that sect, those old guys didn't dare to say anything. The reason why Duan Lingtian didn't see the old Marquis when he came back last time was because the old Marquis was living with his wife in that sect, and half a year ago, that sect had a dispute with another sect, and Nie Yuan's mother was injured in the conflict, and her strength greatly decreased. This time, those elders of the same sect jumped out to bully her again. Nie Yuan's mother thought that she had devoted half her life to the sect, but received such a reward, and the more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. Thinking of her grandson who had already married and had children, she decided to abdicate and stay away from the sect's internal strife. But those sect elders didn't allow it, insisting that she stay in the forbidden area and be a sect protector, unless the sect encountered a crisis. She was not allowed to leave the forbidden area. Of course, she could choose to leave the sect, but there were 2 conditions. First, abolish her cultivation. Second, after abolishing her cultivation, pass the test of climbing the mountain of knives and descending into the sea of fire before she could officially leave the sect. What is climbing the mountain of knives and descending into the sea of fire? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Nie Yuan said with a calm face, that is an extremely harsh test. Generally, only people who have committed great crimes, after having their cultivation abolished, have to pass that test. Since the existence of that sect, no one who has had their cultivation abolished has been able to pass that test. Those old guys want my mother to die. Speaking of the latter, Nie Yuan's eyes were bloodshot. Although he was the divine might marquis of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, second only to one person and above 10,000, he couldn't influence the sect where his mother was. Grandpa Nya, Uncle Nya, I'll go with you. After knowing the ins and outs of the matter, Duan Lingtian said to the two. Huh? Duan Lingtian's words stunned the two, and then they shook their heads at the same time. No, this matter is not something you can solve. Yes, little Tian. Although your talent is good, it's only been a few years, and at most you've just broken through to the void transformation realm not long ago. And that sect, at worst, is also a second-rate sect, and there are many existences above the void transformation realm 7th level. Nie Yuan also said, although he knew that Duan Lingtian's martial arts talent was heaven-defying, but, in his opinion, in just a few short years, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to have a cultivation above the void transformation realm 7th level. Second-rate sect? Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow and muttered to himself. According to his understanding of the sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, that second-rate sect should be a sect of the same level as the Boundless sect, where Xiongquan was. Originally in a second-rate sect, there are no warriors above the void entry realm. Such a sect is really nothing to Duan Lingtian now. After all, he is standing at a different height. Grandpa Nya, Uncle Nya, do you believe me? Seeing that the two were unwilling to let him take action, Duan Lingtian's face sank, and he asked seriously in the end. Nye Yuan and the two had no choice but to comply with Duan Lingtian. This time, saving Grandma will be a gift for my little nephew who I haven't even met yet. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. This time, when he came to the Divine Might Marquis estate, he didn't even have time to see Nye Fun and Nye Fin's child before he hurriedly left with the old Marquis Nye Rong and the current Divine Might. Marquis Nye Yuan, after leaving the Divine Might Marquis estate, Duan Lingtian returned to his residence. After saying hello to Feng Wu Dao and the three, he reunited with Nye Rong and Nye Yuan and left the imperial city of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Outside the imperial city, Nye Rong and Nye Yuan flew through the air. Initially, they deliberately slowed down to accommodate Duan Lingtian. However, as they gradually accelerated and found that Duan Lingtian was always following them at a leisurely pace, they couldn't help but be shocked. Father's cultivation is at the 4th level of the void prying stage, and mine is at the 3rd level of the void prying stage. I'm flying at full speed now, yet Xiao Tian can still keep up with me without rushing, and he looks as composed as father. Nye Yuan couldn't help but gasp. Doesn't that mean Xiao Tian's current cultivation is already above the 4th level of the void prying stage? Nye Yuan was shocked, and Nye Rong was equally shocked. He had lived for most of his life to achieve his current cultivation, but this young man beside him, he still had 2 or 3 years before he turned 30, right? What kind of talent was this? Such talent, even if placed in the 3 great sects of Qinglin, the most powerful sects in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom today, would probably be considered top tier, right? Xiao Tian, I heard you also joined a sect in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom? Nye Rong suddenly asked. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Which sect did you join? Nye Rong asked curiously. Before Duan Ling Tian could speak, Nye Yuan, who was flying on Nye Rong's other side, already spoke. He looked at Duan Ling Tian and slowly said, Xiao Tian, with your talent, in your 7-star sword sect, in terms of talent, I estimate no one can compare to you, right? Nye Yuan had vaguely heard Duan Ling Tian mention the sect he joined when Duan Ling Tian returned last time, so he had always kept it in mind. Of course, he didn't know much about the sects in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom and wasn't aware that the 7-star sword sect was once the #1 sect in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom. However, just because he didn't know didn't mean Nye Rong didn't know. When Nye Rong heard Nye Yuan's words, his pupils constricted, and he looked at Duan Ling Tian with some alarm. Xiao Tian you. The sect you joined back then was the 7-star sword sect? Seeing Nye Rong's current expression, Duan Ling Tian knew that Nye Rong probably knew something about the 7-star sword sect. Facts proved that Duan Ling Tian's guess was correct. Nye Rong took a deep breath and slowly said, as far as I know, 5 years ago, the 7-star sword sect was jointly annihilated by the other 3 great sects, which were also among the 5 great sects of the Qinglin imperial kingdom at that time, right? The opening mountain sect also seemed to have been annihilated along with it. Before Duan Ling Tian could respond, Nie Yuan, standing beside him, was already stunned. Being in the Crimson Sky Kingdom, he had never heard of these widely spread events in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom, so he was unaware. The Seven-Star Sword sect was destroyed 5 years ago? At this moment, Nie Yuan couldn't help but recall that the time Duan Ling Tian left the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom sect and returned to the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City also seemed to be 5 years ago. In that case, Duan Ling Tian returned to the Crimson Sky Kingdom after the Seven-Star Sword sect was annihilated. He was completely unaware of this. Xiao Tian. For a moment, Nie Yuan looked at Duan Ling Tian and couldn't help but ask, is what my father said true? The Seven-Star Sword sect was annihilated 5 years ago, and you returned to the Crimson Sky Kingdom after the Seven-Star Sword sect was annihilated. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered, and he nodded. To him, this was no secret. Xiao Tian, you're already very lucky to have survived after the Seven-Star Sword sect was destroyed. Are you currently in the 3 great sects of Qinglin? Nie Rong asked, in his opinion. Although Duan Ling Tian's talent was good, it was impossible for him to survive the 3 great sects of Qinglin's encirclement and suppression of the Seven-Star Sword sect. Duan Ling Tian's survival should be because he betrayed the Seven-Star Sword sect and joined the 3 great sects of Qinglin. The 3 great sects of Qinglin. Duan Ling Tian chuckled inwardly. If this old marquis knew that the 3 great sects of Qinglin had already been destroyed by his hand, he wondered what kind of expression he would have. What? You're not a disciple of the 3 great sects of Qinglin now? Seeing Duan Ling Tian's non-committal expression, Nierong couldn't help but press further. No. Duan Ling Tian shook his head, then added, I'm still a disciple of the Seven-Star Sword sect. I knew it. Xiao Tian is a good child who knows how to repay kindness and would never betray his sect to join the 3 great sects of Qinglin, which annihilated his own sect. Originally, when Nie Yuan heard Nierong's question to Duan Ling Tian, his mood was also somewhat complicated. If Duan Ling Tian had indeed betrayed the sect that nurtured him and joined the enemy sect, then although he wouldn't say anything outwardly, he would definitely have some reservations about Duan Ling Tian in his heart. After all, that was the sect that had shown kindness to Duan Ling Tian. Now, hearing that Duan Ling Tian hadn't betrayed his sect, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Xiao Tian, as far as I know, in recent years, the 3 great sects of Qinglin have been searching for Seven-Star Sword sect disciples all over the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom. Any Seven-Star Sword sect disciples found will be annihilated. Nya? Rong said with a worried expression. Is your current location safe? Grandpa Nya, don't worry, I'm very safe now. Duan Ling Tian was very touched by Nye Rong's concern. That's good. Nye Rong nodded, relieved. Xiao Tian, I didn't know your Seven-Star Sword sect had already. Then, wasn't it very dangerous for you to participate in the genius competition held by the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom later? Nie Yuan asked that a year ago, the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom's imperial family extensively rewarded the Crimson Sky Kingdom and exempted them from taxes for 10 years, and all of this was thanks to Duan Ling Tian's efforts. Because Duan Ling Tian passed the selection of the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom's genius competition, successfully advanced, and obtained the qualification to participate in the Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition. What? Xiao Tian, you even participated in that genius competition back then? Nie Rong's eyes widened, his face filled with shock. Father, it was His Majesty and I who asked Xiao Tian to represent the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Nie Yuan said somewhat meekly. Nonsense. Nie Rong scolded. What if something happened to Xiao Tian? This is truly nonsense. Fortunately, Xiao Tian is fine. Otherwise, how could you face him? How could you face Ru Feng? Nie Yuan was so reprimanded that he couldn't speak. Grandpa Nye, don't blame Uncle Nye. I didn't tell him about the Seven-Star Sword sect being annihilated because I was afraid he would worry about me. Duan Ling Tian said, helping Nie Yuan out of his predicament. The 3 continued to fly forward for a while, and Nie Yuan couldn't help but ask, Xiao Tian, you later went to the Blackstone Empire, and competed with a group of young talents. From the Blackstone Empire, what was the cultivation of the strongest young talent who appeared when the young talents competition began? Nie Yuan was very curious about this. An imperial kingdom, superior to a kingdom, was enough for him to look up to, and an empire was even superior to an imperial kingdom. To him, it was an existence that was difficult to reach even by looking up. The strongest young talent. Duan Ling Tian pondered for a moment after hearing Nie Yuan's words, then recalled, at that time, in the Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition, there was an existence at the third level of the void. Initiation stage. He was the strongest among the 10 who advanced in the Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition. As for later, there was also an existence at the first level of the void initiation stage. Third level of the void initiation stage? First level of the void initiation stage? Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, not only Nie Yuan, but even Nie Rong couldn't help but gasp, exclaiming, as expected of the Empire's young talents, breaking through to the third level of the void initiation stage before the age of 38. Such talent is astonishing. Perhaps, in another 10 years, when Xiao Tian is 38, he can also achieve such accomplishments. Nie Yuan looked at Duan Ling Tian, full of confidence in him. As for whether Duan Ling Tian advanced in the Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition, he didn't ask, because in his opinion, it was impossible for Duan Ling Tian to advance. The Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition was something that happened more than a year ago. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian was only at the fourth level of the void prying stage now. A year ago, he was probably only at the second or third level of the void prying stage. With such cultivation, it was impossible to advance in the Blackstone Empire's Young Talents competition. Because of this consideration, he didn't ask, fearing to discourage Duan Ling Tian. And since Nie Yuan didn't ask, Duan Ling Tian naturally wouldn't volunteer the information. The group of 3 continued to fly forward. 3 days later, the 3 left the Crimson Sky Kingdom and entered the territory of the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom. Actually, with Duan Ling Tian's current strength, it wouldn't take this long to go from the Crimson Sky Kingdom to the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom. The reason it took so long was because he was accommodating Nie Yuan. His speed was kept at the same level as Nie Yuan's, the speed of a martial artist at the third level of the void prying stage. Following Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, as they flew through the air above the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom, Duan Ling Tian discovered a problem. That is, this direction was actually towards the Demon Lotus Valley, the original base of the Demon Lotus Blade sect. It seemed that Nie Yuan's mother's second-rate sect was also in that direction. Along the way, Duan Ling Tian intentionally inquired about that second-rate sect, and Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, recounted everything one by one without any impatience. The sect my wife belongs to is called Flying Rainbow Sect, and it only accepts female disciples. Therefore, in the Flying Rainbow Sect, from the sect master and various high-ranking officials down to an outer disciple, they are all exclusively female disciples. Nie Rong slowly said. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little shocked that a sect entirely composed of female disciples could actually become a second-rate sect in the Qinglin Imperial Kingdom, which was truly surprising. One must know that on the Cloud Continent, the talent of female martial artists, from birth, is inherently weaker than that of male martial artists. This is an ironclad rule. Therefore, among the true powerhouses on the Cloud Continent, they are generally male. Of course, this doesn't mean that the talent of all female martial artists is inferior to that of male martial artists. It's just speaking. In general terms, there are also many female martial artists whose talent far surpasses that of males. Not to mention anything else. Just take his fiancée, Kur. She displayed astonishing talent from a young age, and many years ago, she even joined a major power in the outer realm. So her current strength must be even greater. She might even have surpassed him. Although he was now a 9th-level void prying martial artist, and had even taken first place in the Great Han Dynasty's martial competition, earning the prestigious title of number 1, he knew very well that the young talents in the Great Han Dynasty were completely different from the young talents from the outer domain according to the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor from his 2 lives. Not to mention the astonishing achievements he made before the age of 40 in his second life. Even many other martial artists have reached the void transformation stage before 40. A void transformation stage practitioner under 40. What kind of concept was that? Duan Ling Tian dared not imagine it further. Leaving aside others, among the people I know, Xuanai, although her appearance remains that of a 15 or 16-year-old, her true age is only in her early 20s. Void transformation stage. Perhaps she will successfully enter it before she turns 30. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head, making him feel that all his past achievements were utterly insignificant compared to Xuanai. Xuanai, you truly are disheartening. Duan Ling Tian sighed inwardly, unable to help but recall that mysterious girl again. Thinking of the girl, he naturally thought of those 3 little fellows, little black, little white, little gold. I wonder how they are doing now, and if they have entered that extremely dangerous place that Qing Nu spoke of. Duan Ling Tian mused. Soon, Duan Ling Tian pulled his wandering thoughts back, and his mood gradually calmed. Oh, right, the spatial ring my father left for me. On the journey, aboard Duan Ling Tian took out the spatial ring that Nie Yuan had given him a few days ago, the one his father, Duan Ru Feng, had left for him. Hiss, a drop of blood fell, and after the spatial ring recognized him as its master. Through the blood, it gave Duan Ling Tian a feeling of being connected by blood. After the spatial ring recognized its master, Duan Ling Tian eagerly looked into the space within. A vast space was completely empty. There was a jade slip, 3 sheets of paper-like objects stacked together, similar to the talismans used by Taoist priests in his previous life to deceive people, and a thick, heavy tome tightly closed, with a faint glow shimmering around it. The tome was entirely emerald green, and its cover only had some patterns that didn't appear special, but Duan Ling Tian felt that the faint glow shimmering on it was quite extraordinary. Is that a sound transmission jade slip? Finally, Duan Ling Tian realized that among the items his father left behind, he only recognized the sound transmission jade slip. It must be a message from father before he left. I wonder what he said. Out of curiosity, Duan Ling Tian took out the sound transmission jade slip and infused his origin energy into it. Instantly, a familiar voice clearly entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. This voice was precisely that of Duan Ling Tian's father, Duan Ru Feng. By the time you hear this message, your father has already left the great Han dynasty with your mother, as well as Jing Ru, and those 2 future daughters-in-law. Upon hearing this, Duan Ling Tian's mouth couldn't help but twitch. 2 future daughters-in-law. Was he talking about Xiao Lan and Bai Yao? Was this really his biological father? He wished he could stay far away from those 2 girls, but his father, on the other hand, was adding to the trouble. How was he supposed to face those 2 girls in the future? Wait a minute. Leaving the great Han dynasty, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp, his heart trembling with shock. That wasn't he just going out for a stroll? How did this turn into leaving the great Han dynasty? After the initial shock, Duan Ling Tian's mood temporarily calmed down, and he began to recall the scenes from when his cheap old man, Duan Ru Feng, had returned. First, his father had returned after an absence of 23 years. Secondly, his father's experiences during those 23 years were only vaguely mentioned in a single sentence at the time. He still remembered his father's words clearly. Back then, I went to the death swamp to find the ethereal flower for you and your mother. And during that time, an unexpected turn of events occurred. For certain reasons, I was unable to control myself for these 23 years and couldn't come back to find you and your mother. If it weren't for the hope of returning to find you and your mother, I would have chosen to perish together with that person long ago. I wouldn't have had to be driven by him for so many years, barely clinging to life until today. That person received his just deserts and has been utterly annihilated. Otherwise, I might not have been able to return to find you and your mother. These were the words his father had said upon his return. At the time, Duan Ling Tian only thought that his father had been imprisoned and enslaved by someone. And that person's strength was so great that his father couldn't find an opportunity to escape and find him and his mother. However, recalling it now, there were many loopholes. If that person was so powerful, how could he have been easily annihilated? Furthermore, father said that his origin energy no longer existed. Because of that statement, I subconsciously believed that his cultivation had been crippled. When my spiritual force probed his body and found no trace of origin energy, I became even more certain that his cultivation had been crippled. Duan Ling Tian frowned at this point. If father truly lost all his cultivation, how did he take mother, Jing Ru, Xiaolan, and Bai Yao out of the great Han dynasty? Even if there was some means of transportation, the world outside the great Han dynasty was full of powerful individuals, far beyond what the Red Cloud Kingdom could compare to. For a moment, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but feel a little worried. Worried about the safety of his father and mother, worried about the safety of Jing Ru, Xiaolan, and Bai Yao. What is all this about? Duan Ling Tian was completely bewildered. Gradually, he stopped overthinking and further infused his origin energy into the sound transmission jade slip in his hand, continuing to listen to his father's message. Are you very confused right now as to why I would take your mother and the others out of the great Han dynasty? Are you worried about our safety? If so, you can rest assured, we are very safe now. Upon hearing this, Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched that he truly felt that at this moment, his father was like a worm in his stomach. However, he detected confidence in his father's tone. Duan Ling Tian continued to listen. I know you have many questions, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. Also, we won't be returning to the Red Cloud Kingdom for a while. Perhaps, when we meet again in the future, it will be in the outside world, not the Red Cloud Kingdom. Xiaolan and Bai Yao, those two girls, both have good talent. With a little refinement, they will certainly achieve great things. As for Jing Ru, her talent is also decent, and your mother is used to having her by her side, so I brought her along as well. By now, you've probably seen the two things I left for you. First, those 3 stacked talismans might save your life 3 times in the future. The method of use is to throw the talisman at your opponent, then lock your gaze on your opponent and shout Lin, Pro, to activate it. Talismans. Duan Ling Tian frowned. Talismans, to be honest, were not unfamiliar to him at all. Of course, it wasn't because he had the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor. In the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, there was no record of talismans whatsoever. The reason he was familiar with talismans was because talismans were not uncommon on Earth, where he had lived in his previous life, especially in the ancient Eastern country where he was from. Talismans were even rarer items. I already thought those 3 talismans were a bit strange, with their scribbles very similar to the talismans from my previous life. I never thought they were actually talismans. And father said those 3 talismans could save my life 3 times? Could it be that there's some profound secret within those 3 talismans? Duan Ling Tian was filled with confusion, eager to take out a talisman right now, shout Lin, and test it out. But his rationality stopped him. Subconsciously, he felt that those 3 talismans shouldn't be wasted like that, but rather good steel should be used. On the edge of a blade. How did father get these talismans? This was something Duan Ling Tian couldn't figure out. Wasn't his father a person with no cultivation whatsoever? Where did these strange talismans come from? One must know that even if he searched through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories from 2 lives, he found no records of talismans. In other words, on this cloud continent, the reincarnation Martial Emperor had never heard of talismans, let alone seen them. This showed how rare talismans were. Where did father get these strange things? Looking at the 3 talismans inside the spatial ring, Duan Ling Tian was a little exasperated. These 3 talismans looked exactly like the items used by fraudulent Taoist priests in the ancient Eastern country on Earth in his previous life to swindle and deceive people. However, father shouldn't lie to me. Soon, Duan Ling Tian recovered and continued listening to the voice from the sound transmission jade slip. Besides the 3 talismans, I've left you an exquisite jade box. When you are capable of opening it in the future, you will know where your mother and I are. All right, that's about all I have to say. Don't worry about us. We're doing very well. Also, I haven't met the other two daughters-in-law yet. You rascal. Bring them to see me soon. The voice stopped abruptly here. Duan Ling Tian gave a wry smile. From his father's tone, he seemed quite carefree. This is the exquisite jade box. I thought it was a tome. Duan Ling Tian's gaze slowly fell on the item in the spatial ring that looked very much like a tome. With a thought, Duan Ling Tian took it out of the spatial ring. So cold. The exquisite jade box felt icy cold to the touch, and the chilling sensation spread throughout Duan Ling Tian's body in an instant, making him shiver involuntarily. After observing it carefully for a while, Duan Ling Tian could see a tiny seam in the middle of the exquisite jade box, which was the gap formed when the upper and lower parts of the jade box closed together. Father's message in the sound transmission jade slip said something about what would happen when I was capable of opening this jade box. This jade box, I can easily. Duan Ling Tian's murmuring stopped there. Only because, while murmuring, he had already wrapped his origin energy around his hand and tried to open the jade box. But the result was that the jade box remained completely still and could not be opened at all. Asterisk, how is that possible? Duan Ling Tian's eyes widened in shock, and at the same time, the origin energy in his hand rapidly increased, reaching its maximum in an instant. But even so, the exquisite jade box remained motionless, completely impossible to open. Strands of azure, purple, and earthy yellow energy swirled with the origin energy in Duan Ling Tian's hand. Attempting to open the jade box, it still showed no signs of movement. Duan Ling Tian's heart trembled, and the origin energy in his hand dispersed. The azure, purple, and earthy yellow energies also vanished, leaving his face filled with astonishment. When had he ever seen such a peculiar jade box? No wonder. Dad left that message in the sound transmission jade slip. He must have known that I wouldn't be able to open this exquisite jade box right now. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian finally understood. Just now, when he heard his father say that, he was still unconvinced, thinking that opening a small jade box would be as easy as flipping his hand. But now, it seemed that even if he exerted all his strength, or even used a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, he might not be able to open this jade box. I'll find a time to try with the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. After recovering his composure, Duan Ling Tian raised his hand and put the exquisite jade box back into his spatial ring. Xiao Tian, what's wrong? Just then, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, both looked at Duan Ling Tian. They saw the heaven and earth energy that had just accumulated above Duan Ling Tian's head, but hadn't yet solidified, realizing that Duan Ling Tian had been gathering power just now. Nothing. Duan Ling Tian shook his head lightly, making up a casual excuse. I just had some enlightenment in my cultivation. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan did not doubt Duan Ling Tian's words. Nie Yuan even sighed. No wonder, Xiao Tian. You have such cultivation at such a young age. In the path of martial arts cultivation, you truly possess a unique and extraordinary talent that ordinary people can hardly match. Nie Rong nodded in agreement. Uncle Nie, you flatter me. Duan Ling Tian smiled modestly. About 10 days later, Duan Ling Tian and Nie Yuan stopped in midair. Simply because Nie Rong had stopped first, and they had followed him to at this moment. Nie Rong's gaze fell upon a giant mountain in the distance. That is Feihong Mountain, the stronghold of the Feihong sect. Upon hearing this, Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow and couldn't help but look up, staring intently. The distant giant mountain lay there like a colossal beast, its summit shrouded in mist. Through the strong sunlight, clear and vibrant streaks of colorful clouds were reflected. The colorful clouds, in various hues, wound and twisted through the mist, looking like a collection of distorted rainbows, providing a visual feast. The so-called visual feast is nothing more than this. Duan Ling Tian secretly sighed. Although, compared to the 7-star sword sect stronghold, the 7 great sword peaks, and even the former demonic lotus blade sect stronghold, the demonic lotus valley, this Feihong sect stronghold, Feihong Mountain, was a notch inferior. But the Feihong sect was, after all, only a second-rate sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and having such a stronghold was already quite good. This is Feihong Mountain. When I was a child, I heard my mother say that the summit of Feihong Mountain was like the legendary immortal realm. After I grew up, I once thought my mother was just saying it casually. I never expected it to be true. Nie Yuan exclaimed, Uncle, Nya, you haven't been to the Feihong sect before. Duan Ling Tian was surprised that in his opinion, Nie Yuan was the son of the Feihong sect master, no matter what. Even if some old geezers in the Feihong sect targeted Nie Yuan's mother, they wouldn't go so far as to forbid Nie Yuan from coming to the Feihong sect, would they? All this time, to prevent me from being disturbed by the people of the Feihong sect, my mother never took me there, and the people of the Feihong sect don't know my whereabouts. Nie Yuan explained. Duan Ling Tian suddenly understood, not. Far to the north of Feihong Mountain is one of the strongholds of the three great sects of Azure Forest, the demonic Lotus Valley. Nie Rong said to Duan Ling Tian. It is said that the Feihong sect and the former demonic Lotus Blade sect had a close relationship. Even the Feihong sect's ability to occupy such an excellent stronghold as Feihong Mountain was due to the protection of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. Demonic Lotus Blade sect? Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed at in fact, when Nie Rong pointed to the distant giant mountain and said it was the Feihong sect's stronghold, Feihong Mountain, he was already somewhat surprised that the Feihong sect's stronghold and the former demonic Lotus Blade sect's stronghold, demonic Lotus Valley, were so close. Surprised that the Feihong sect, merely a second-rate sect, actually had a stronghold like Feihong Mountain. Now, hearing Nie Rong's explanation, Duan Ling Tian suddenly understood. Demonic Lotus Blade sect, a hint of disdain, imperceptible to others, had appeared at the corner of Duan Ling Tian's mouth. Of course, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, did not see it. Let's go. Duan Ling Tian greeted Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, then took the lead, stepping into the air and flying towards Feihong Mountain. He didn't deliberately speed up, allowing Nie Rong and Nie Yuan to follow closely behind him. In a moment, the three arrived outside Feihong Mountain. As they drew closer, Duan Ling Tian could see several winding mountain paths within Feihong Mountain, and between each section of the path, there was a spacious platform located halfway up the mountain. Most of these platforms had buildings, a few were filled with flowers and plants, and one was particularly vast and empty, but it was also the liveliest. The latter was clearly the Feihong sect's martial arts arena, Xiaotian. Seeing Duan Ling Tian move, preparing to fly straight into the Feihong sect, Nie Rong became anxious. Grandpa Nie? Duan Ling Tian stopped after Nie Rong called him, looking at Nie Rong with a puzzled expression. You haven't notified your sect's helpers yet. Wait until you've called your sect's helpers. Then we can enter the Feihong sect to rescue her. There's no rush. Nie Rong said. Also, remember to tell the helpers you invite not to reveal their identities. Otherwise, those old geezers in the Feihong sect will definitely report this to the three great sects of Azure Forest. Once that happens, things will become complicated. But if you and your helpers don't reveal your identities, then this matter will only be an internal affair of the Feihong sect, and those old geezers in the Feihong sect won't possibly seek help from the three great sects. Nie Rong finished speaking in one breath, expressing his concerns. Helpers. Nie Rong's words made Duan Ling Tian momentarily stunned. Then he shook his head. Grandpa Nie, I didn't plan to find any helpers. What a joke. If he still needed to find helpers to rescue someone from a mere second-rate sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he might as well just bang his head against a wall and die. With his current strength, let alone a second-rate sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he wouldn't even fear the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family. Didn't plan to find helpers? Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, were dumbfounded. After a moment, Nie Rong was the first to react, hastily saying, Xiao Tian, don't joke with Grandpa Nie at a time like this. Forcing our way into the Feihong sect like this is already a grave transgression against them. With just the three of us, I'm afraid not only will we fail to rescue my wife, but we will also become deeply entangled in this. He could take the risk, but he didn't want his son and Duan Ling Tian, who had no connection to this matter, to take the risk. Joking, Duan Ling Tian was somewhat exasperated. In the end, he was too lazy to continue explaining, so he flew out and landed directly above the spacious martial arts arena halfway up the mountain in the Feihong sect's stronghold. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian's aerial appearance immediately attracted the attention of all the Feihong sect disciples in the martial arts arena. These Feihong sect disciples were all female, some beautiful, some plain, with varying appearances, but one thing was certain: their martial arts talent was good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been accepted into the Feihong sect. Who is that? It looks like a man. He's getting closer. Wow, he's so handsome. Sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, exceptionally heroic and graceful. Heavens, this is simply my perfect lover from my dreams. You little hussy, stop being so flirtatious. How could such an outstanding person ever look at you? He looks to be only around 25, yet he can fly in the air, which means he's a strong cultivator above the void prying stage. Do we have such an outstanding young talent in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? You didn't say, and I almost forgot he came flying. His talent is even stronger than the 5 great young masters, the most outstanding young generation in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. 5 great young masters? The most outstanding young generation in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Don't tell me you've forgotten. Back then, in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there appeared a person even more outstanding than the 5 great young masters. Not only that, but in the genius competition over 2 years ago, another outstanding young talent reportedly emerged, no less than the 5 great young masters. Right? How could I forget Duan Ling Tian and the mysterious young man Su Li, who advanced in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's genius competition over 2 years ago? Even Duan Ling Tian and Su Li are probably far inferior to him, right? As soon as Duan Ling Tian arrived at the Feihong sect's martial arts arena, he heard a flurry of excited discussions. Watching the group of Feihong sect female disciples in the martial arts arena whispering to each other, some even sending him flirtatious glances, he couldn't help but feel a little awkward. They say 3 women make a market, but with so many women gathered together, he felt as if his eardrums were about to burst. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan followed, standing on either side of Duan Ling Tian. Isn't that the sect master's husband? Suddenly, someone in the martial arts arena stared at Nie Rong and exclaimed in surprise. The sect master's husband? Is that the guest who used to live in Feiyun Pavilion? Didn't he leave our Feihong sect because several grand elders pressured the sect master? Why is he back again? The 2 people beside him, could they be the helpers he invited? Many Feihong sect female disciples whispered. I heard that besides making the sect master abdicate, the grand elders also made her enter the forbidden area for secluded cultivation, completely isolating her from the world. It seems the sect master's husband has brought helpers to rescue her. Several older Feihong sect disciples hastily turned and left, clearly going to report the news. Asterisk, Little Tian. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, both looked at Duan Ling Tian, their brows furrowed with deep concern. Grandpa Nie, Uncle Nie, don't worry. Duan Ling Tian reassured them with a glance. However, even with that, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan still felt uneasy. They couldn't understand why. Duan Ling Tian was so bold, daring to force his way into the Feihong sect. They had considered that perhaps Duan Ling Tian's current strength was enough to suppress the old geezers of the Feihong sect, which was why he dared to act this way. But then, on second thought, that seemed a bit far-fetched. How old was Duan Ling Tian? Even with immense talent, could he, still far from 30, possess a cultivation above the void prying stage 7th level? In their opinion, it was highly unrealistic. As Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, fretted, a series of swift wind whistles suddenly came from the distant sky. A moment later, 3 figures finally appeared before Duan Ling Tian and the 2 men. These were 3 old women, all past their 70s, one dressed in green, one in blue, and one in yellow. Grand Elder. Grand Elder. The group of Feihong sect female disciples on the training grounds all bowed to the 3 old women. The 3 old women were precisely the 3 grand elders of the Feihong sect. Rumor had it that all 3 were existences above the void prying stage 7th level. Whoosh. 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 The three old women stood in the air not far from Duan Ling Tian and the two men, their gazes immediately locking onto Nie Rong. This was simply because, among the three people before them, they only recognized Nie Rong. It seems you truly haven't taken the words of us three old geezers to heart. I remember, before you left last time, I warned you that if you dared to step into our Fei Hong sect again, I would cripple your cultivation. The green-clad old woman's gaze, sharp as a knife, stared intently at Nie Rong as she spoke in a deep voice. Nie Rong's face darkened slightly, his body trembling with anger at this moment. He only hated himself for being too weak to his strength. We're greater than this old geezers. He would have taught her a lesson long ago. Why would he endure such humiliation now? Old geezer, you're looking for death. Nie Rong was willing to silently endure, but Nie Yuan was not. Hearing someone threaten to cripple his father's cultivation, how could Nie Yuan continue to stand by and watch? After a fierce shout, his sharp gaze locked onto the green-clad old woman, ready to strike at any moment. The green-clad old woman's face instantly sank upon hearing Nie Yuan's voice. However, when her gaze fell upon Nie Yuan's face, she couldn't help but be startled, simply because the contours of Nie Yuan's face were so similar to Nie Rong's that anyone with eyes could tell they were father and son. Immediately, the green-clad old woman laughed in extreme anger. I wondered who it was. So it's that little bastard from back then. I never thought that little bastard would have grown so big. Coming to our Fei Hong sect today with your father, are you preparing to see your mother one last time? You're looking for death. Nie Yuan, hearing the green-clad old woman's sarcastic words, could no longer hold back. His elemental energy surged, and he prepared to attack. However, he was stopped by Nie Rong. Void prying stage 3rd level? Your talent is quite good. It's just a pity that before us three, your cultivation is not enough. The green-clad old woman sneered, looking at the 4,000 ancient mammoth phantoms above Nie Yuan's head. Why waste so much breath on them? Just cripple them. Among the other two old women who had not spoken, the blue-clad old woman said indifferently her words were utterly cold, devoid of any emotion, as if a judge of life and death was delivering a resolute verdict. The last old woman, in yellow, did not speak, but her step forward and the surge of elemental energy from her body undoubtedly showed her current stance at this moment. Above the yellow-clad old woman's head, an ancient horned dragon phantom instantly appeared, coiling down, lifelike. Void prying stage 7th level. This yellow-clad old woman was clearly a void prying stage 7th level martial artist. Is this the ancient horned dragon phantom? Rumor has it that besides the sect master, our Fei Hong sect's 3 grand elders are also existences. Above the void prying stage 7th level. It seems all of this is true. Of course it's true. I've even seen the sect master act. The sect master is a powerful expert at the void prying stage 8th level. It's just a pity that she is now seriously injured, which has affected her cultivation. It is said that after the sect master was seriously injured, although her meridians were repaired by healing elixirs, there were many blood clots obstructing her meridians that were difficult to remove, which greatly restricted her elemental energy. On the training grounds, a group of Fei Hong sect female disciples discussed amongst themselves. Of course, some things they knew in their hearts but did not say aloud. If the sect master hadn't been injured, how would the 3 grand elders dare to be so presumptuous? This was their truest thought. Most people looked at Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, with sympathy. They were aware of the 3 grand elders' methods and knew that even if the Nie family father and son miraculously survived today, they would still suffer greatly. Asterisk, what a pity for this handsome, elegant young master. I'm afraid he's going to be harmed by them. On the training grounds, many Fei Hong sect female disciples looked at the purple-clad youth standing between Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, their hearts filled with regret. Although none of them had ever spoken to this purple-clad youth, their first impression of him was excellent, and they genuinely did not wish for him to be harmed. But they also knew that the current situation was beyond their interference. Whoosh, whoosh. Following the yellow-clad old woman, the green-clad old woman and the blue-clad old woman simultaneously stepped forward, their elemental energy raging. and an ancient horned dragon phantom also appeared above each of their heads. Two more void-prying stage 7th level powerhouses. A group of Feihong sect female disciples couldn't help but gasp. Although they had often heard in the past that their Feihong sect's 3 grand elders were all void-prying stage 7th level existences, that was only hearsay, completely different from seeing it with their own eyes. Asterisk 3 ancient horned dragons appeared above the heads of the 3 old women, coiling down, lifelike, bringing a tremendous visual shock to the group of Feihong sect female disciples. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, father and son, both had their faces sink. Immediately after, they exchanged glances, seemingly reaching a tacit understanding, and simultaneously stepped forward, firmly shielding Duan Ling Tian behind them. Little Tian, hurry and go. Yes, you go quickly, we'll hold them off. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan's elemental energy condensed into voices, reaching Duan Ling Tian's ears immediately, filled with urgency. Hearing these two elemental energy condensed voices, a warmth couldn't help but rise in Duan Ling Tian's heart that he knew in his heart. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan did not know his true strength, so their current actions were purely from the heart, not wanting him to suffer any harm. This matter has nothing to do with him. The 3 grand elders of the dignified Feihong sect shouldn't attack a young man, should they? Nie Rong said in a deep voice. Humph. The green-clad old woman's cold snort was her reply to Nie Rong. I don't care who he is, but since he dared to come to the Feihong sect to cause trouble with you two father and son, don't blame me for being merciless. He, like you, will have his cultivation crippled and can live. Otherwise death. The blue-clad old woman's eyes flashed with fierce light as she said in a deep voice, whoosh. The yellow-clad old woman's robes billowed, and her sharp eyes, gleaming with cold light, instantly locked onto Duan Ling Tian. Nie Rong's expression immediately changed upon hearing this, and they call themselves Feihong sect Grand Elders. In my opinion, you 3 are the disgrace of the Feihong sect. Don't think I don't know why you target my mother. It's not because of her union with my father at all, but because, in your eyes, she stole the sect master position from your adopted daughter. Facing such a perilous situation, Nie Yuan completely tore off the pretense and sneered. In my opinion, what right does that sore loser have to compete with my mother? Whoosh! Nie Yuan's words were like a stone thrown into a pond, causing 1,000 ripples. Not only was Duan Ling Tian startled, but even the group of Feihong sect female disciples on the training grounds couldn't help but look at Nie Yuan. It seemed there was some inside story. Die! And at this moment, the yellow-clad old woman let out a cold shout and directly attacked. Her target was not Duan Ling Tian, whom she had just locked onto, but Nie Yuan, who had just finished speaking those resolute words. She was clearly enraged and somewhat irrational because of Nie Yuan's statement. The Feihong sect female disciples present only saw a yellow lightning bolt flash across the sky, heading straight for the middle-aged man who seemed to be the sect master's son. Whoosh! But at this critical moment, a swift sword light descended from the sky, intercepting the yellow lightning bolt that was swiftly shooting towards Nie Yuan. Immediately after, a white figure appeared in front of Nie Yuan. This was an old woman dressed in simple white clothes, her face slightly pale, clearly suffering from internal injuries. Moreover, because of her recent strike, the hand holding the sword trembled slightly. Mother! Nie Yuan looked at the familiar back in front of him and couldn't help but softly call out, his gentle voice coming from the bottom of his heart. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow. This was the first time he had heard his uncle Nie speak in such a gentle tone. He could hear the respect and adoration Uncle Nie had for the white-clad old woman, sect master. At the same time, the group of Feihong sect female disciples on the training grounds all respectfully bowed to the white-clad old woman. Cough, cough. 3 grand elders, after you kill them, are you also planning to kill me? The white-clad old woman, who was the Feihong sect master Meng Ping, coughed twice, her face growing even paler, and her hoarse voice, tinged with anger, came out. The sect master is joking. Facing the white-clad old woman's questioning, the green-clad old woman's face was calm as she said indifferently, we just wanted to teach them a lesson. We never truly intended to kill them. Yes, sect master. You are injured, so please go back and rest quickly. We will handle this small matter for you. The blue-clad old woman also said, Please leave, sect master. The yellow-clad old woman's tone was resolute and decisive, her sharp eyes flashing with knife-like cold light. Asterisk, what if I don't leave? Meng Ping sneered, her pale, gaunt face filled with a menacing ferocity. Then we'll have to offend you. The old woman in yellow stepped forward, her gaze like lightning, and attacked Meng Ping again, her elemental energy surging and sweeping out. Whoosh. Meng Ping drew her sword, and although she blocked the old woman in yellow's attack again, her elemental energy was completely depleted, and she spat out several mouthfuls of dark blood, her body swaying precariously. Mother! Nie Yuan hurriedly supported his mother, his eyes, now tinged with red, glaring fiercely at the old woman in yellow. My mother is still the sect leader of the Feihong sect. How dare you attack the sect leader? What is your crime? Unfortunately, the old woman in yellow completely ignored Nie Yuan and instead looked at Nie Rong, who was frantically rushing to Meng Ping's side and supporting her. The three of us said last time, if you ever dare to appear in the Feihong sect again, we will cripple your cultivation. Now, will you cripple your own cultivation, or shall I do it for you? Even in front of the sect leader, Meng Ping, the old woman in yellow was unrestrained, openly demanding that Meng Ping's husband, Nie Rong, cripple his cultivation. Nie Rong clenched his fists tightly, gritting his teeth, his old face instantly covered with a layer of frost as he glared fiercely at the old woman in yellow. If you don't cripple your own cultivation in 3 breaths, I'll be happy to do it for you, the old woman in yellow said indifferently. Elder Huang, don't be too presumptuous. Meng Ping was so angry that she spat out several more mouthfuls of dark blood, her voice incredibly hoarse. Sect leader, don't concern yourself with this matter. The old woman in yellow didn't even glance at Meng Ping, but instead stared intently at Nie Rong beside Meng Ping. There are still 2 breaths of time. There's still 1 breath of time. Since you won't cripple your own cultivation, then I'll have to do it for you. After 3 breaths, the old woman in yellow suddenly stepped forward. Immediately, air currents stirred, raising gusts of chilling wind that made the robes of the few people standing in midair flutter and crackle. The old woman in yellow walked towards Nie Rong step by step. Each step she took was like a giant hammer, smashing heavily into Nie Rong's chest, making his face grow even paler. St. Stop. Meng Ping struggled, wanting to stop the old woman in yellow, but unfortunately, her injuries were too severe. She could barely stand in the air, swaying precariously, let alone stop the old woman in yellow with an attack. Whoosh. Just then, Nie Yuan made his move, transforming into a cannonball and shooting out, aiming directly at the old woman in yellow with fierce momentum. An ant trying to stop a chariot. Facing Nie Yuan's attack, the old woman in yellow showed disdain. She raised her hand and swept out with a palm, which descended towards Nie Yuan like a palm leaf fan. If this palm strike landed, Nie Yuan would be crippled, if not dead. Yuaner. Seeing her son in danger, Meng Ping's face changed drastically. She struggled to attack, but then her strength suddenly failed her. Her already precarious body could no longer support her, and she fell with a crash. However, Meng Ping didn't think about what would happen if she fell from such a height. Her gaze was fixed on Nie Yuan. That was the son she had carried for 10 months. Over the years, she had owed her son too much. If her son truly died here today, she swore that the meaning of her existence in this life would no longer be for anything else but to avenge her son to the death. Yuaner. Nie Rong never expected his son to attack the old woman in yellow to save him. His face changed drastically, and he flew out, wanting to rescue him. Unfortunately, his speed was still too slow. Seeing his son about to be engulfed by the old woman in yellow's palm, which was like a palm leaf fan, Nie Rong closed his eyes in despair, and 2 tears fell. Yuaner, bang. Ah! However, the next moment, a loud bang, accompanied by a piercing scream, came, making Nie Rong, who had closed his eyes, freeze. He could tell that it wasn't his son Nie Yuan's voice. When he opened his eyes, he saw a scene he would never forget. Asterisk in front of his son, a purple figure had appeared at some unknown time. Mother. After escaping danger, Nie Yuan didn't have time to think. He immediately swooped down from the air, caught Meng Ping, who was rapidly falling, and then finally breathed a sigh of relief. After confirming his mother was fine, Nie Yuan looked up into the air, staring blankly at the purple figure. Xiao? Xiao Tian. You crippled my cultivation. Immediately after, everyone present heard another shrill, hateful cry. It was the old woman in yellow, who had been sent flying. Her elemental energy was extinguished, and she clutched her lower abdomen as she crashed down. Unfortunately, unlike Meng Ping, she had no sun to catch her. She fell heavily onto the training ground, smashing her head and bleeding, her breath completely gone. On the training ground, whether on the ground or in the sky, there was a deathly silence. One of the 3 grand elders of the Feihong sect just died like that, and she died from falling? Immediately after, gazes, as if by agreement, extended from the training ground and locked onto the purple figure in the air. He crippled the Grand Elder's cultivation? I didn't even see how he attacked just now. And the Grand Elder's cultivation was crippled in one move. Even though she wasn't prepared, it's enough to show how strong he is. The Grand Elder is a void-prying Stage 7 existence. Even if another void-prying Stage 7 martial artist attacked her when she was completely unprepared, they might not be able to cripple her cultivation so cleanly and efficiently. So, his cultivation is above void-prying Stage 8? The group of female disciples of the Feihong sect on the training ground couldn't help but gasp. This purple-clad youth, who looked only about 25 years old, actually possessed such terrifying strength? Void-prying Stage 8. Hearing the discussions of the female disciples of the Feihong sect, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan exchanged glances across the air, both seeing shock and sudden realization in each other's eyes. The shock was because they had no idea beforehand that Duan Ling Tian possessed such terrifying strength. Nonsense. If they had known earlier that Duan Ling Tian possessed such terrifying strength, they wouldn't have been so anxious and fearful just now. The sudden realization was because they finally understood why Duan Ling Tian had the confidence to force his way into the Feihong sect. It turned out that, in his eyes, he simply didn't take those old fogies of the Feihong sect seriously. For a moment, while their hearts were filled with pleasant surprise, they couldn't help but smile bitterly to themselves. They had even thought earlier that Duan Ling Tian couldn't possibly have such powerful strength. Now it seemed that Duan Ling Tian simply couldn't be judged by common sense. With the death of the old woman in yellow, the faces of the old woman in green and the old woman in blue completely changed. The old woman in green's face was grim as she looked at Duan Ling Tian and demanded sharply, "Who exactly are you? Why did you kill our Feihong sect's Grand Elder?" "Kill someone? When did I kill anyone?" Duan Ling Tian glanced indifferently at the old woman in green, shrugging his shoulders. "Don't you dare falsely accuse a good person." "Falsely accuse a good person?" Duan Ling Tian's seemingly incredibly innocent words made everyone, including Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, smile wryly. Especially the female disciples of the Feihong sect. Their faces flushed, as if they were all embarrassed. "For Duan Ling Tian, you clearly killed Elder Huang, and you still dare to quibble?" The old woman in green said in a deep voice. "Elder Huang?" "That old woman in yellow clothes." Duan Ling Tian glanced at the corpse on the training ground, raising an eyebrow. "I admit I crippled her cultivation, but when did I kill her? Which eye did you see it with?" Duan Ling Tian's words made the old woman in green's face turn even more ashen. "You didn't kill her directly, but you crippled her cultivation while she was high in the air. What's the difference between that and killing her?" "Ridiculous." Duan Ling Tian's handsome face, which had been casual, instantly became covered with a layer of frost as he said coldly, "She was high in the air. That's her own business. Did I make her go high in the air? It's no use talking to him. There's no need to say more to him." The old woman in blue stopped the old woman in green, who still wanted to argue with Duan Ling Tian. She looked coldly at Duan Ling. "Tian, who exactly are you? Why are you interfering in our Feihong sect's affairs?" "Who am I?" Duan Ling Tian looked at the old woman in blue as if she were an idiot. "I say, you haven't gotten old and your eyes aren't working. Well, have you? Didn't you see that I came with Grandpa Nya and Uncle Nya? They are my relatives, so why can't I interfere in their affairs? Duan Ling Tian emphasized the words relatives particularly heavily. The old woman in green and the old woman in blue's faces immediately sank upon hearing this. They suddenly realized that the course of events seemed to be completely beyond their expectations and control. Leaving aside everything else, this purple-clad youth in front of them clearly possessed strength even greater than theirs. In a head-on confrontation, they knew that even if they joined forces, they might not be his match. Seeing the two grand elders of the sect speechless in front of the purple-clad youth, the group of female disciples of the Feihong sect on the training ground all lit up. More than 90% of the female disciples secretly sent flirtatious glances towards Duan Ling Tian, hoping to gain his attention. Unfortunately, from beginning to end, Duan Ling Tian ignored them. But even so, they still flocked to him. For a time, the Feihong sect's training ground fell into a temporary silence. No one spoke, all communicating with their eyes. Finally, Meng Ping, the sect leader of the Feihong sect, broke the brief silence. Yuaner, who is this? Facing Meng Ping's question, Nie Yuan didn't dare to delay and said with a smile, Mother, this is Xiao Tian, whom I've mentioned to you before. What? Upon hearing Nie Yuan's words, Meng Ping's pupils couldn't help but constrict, and her breathing became somewhat rapid. She asked excitedly, He is that Duan Ling Tian who came out of your Qishao kingdom? Meng Ping's excitement was heartfelt, and she looked at Duan Ling Tian as if she had seen some important figure. Duan Ling Tian noticed Meng Ping's loss of composure. He knew that Meng Ping had probably heard some things about him, perhaps even including some recent events in the Demon Lotus Valley. Mother, you know Xiao Tian? Seeing Meng Ping's loss of composure, Nie Yuan was momentarily stunned, then asked curiously. Nie Rong also looked at Meng Ping, equally curious. Duan Ling Tian? And at this moment, whether it was the group of Feihong sect female disciples on the training grounds, or the old woman in green and the old woman in blue standing far away in the sky, they all froze. Oh my goodness! So he is Duan Ling Tian. Many Feihong sect female disciples couldn't help but exclaim, He is Duan Ling Tian? The Duan Ling Tian who, with his talent, overshadowed the 5 young masters of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and rose to fame? The Duan Ling Tian who advanced in the genius competition held by our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family more than 2 years ago. As far as I know, Duan Ling Tian seems to be only 27 or 28 this year. His strength, actually above 8th level void prying stage, is truly shocking. Duan Ling Tian is the dream lover of many of our Feihong sect sisters. I never expected him to appear in our Feihong sect. The Feihong sect's training grounds instantly became incredibly lively, with many Feihong sect female disciples even screaming and shouting Duan Ling Tian's name. Their fervent demeanor made Duan Ling Tian feel a bit embarrassed, unlike the excited Feihong sect female disciples. In the distant sky, the old woman in green and the old woman in blue exchanged glances, both seeing fear in the other's eyes. He is Duan Ling Tian? The Duan Ling Tian who not long ago massacred the high-ranking officials of the 3 great sects of the Azure Forest in the Demon Lotus Valley? It must be him. In our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, a young man with such strength, and named Duan Ling Tian can only be him. Duan Ling Tian's current strength is truly terrifying. Even the people of the 3 great sects of the Azure Forest probably never dreamed that in just a few years, Duan Ling Tian would grow to such a terrifying extent. In an instant, the 2 old women communicated with each other via Yuanli sound transmission and simultaneously confirmed Duan Ling Tian's identity. After confirming, their hearts were filled with nothing but terror. Some time ago, the events that occurred in the Demon Lotus Valley might not have spread throughout the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom yet, but their Feihong sect's base, being extremely close to the Demon Lotus Valley, and they themselves being high-ranking officials of the Feihong sect, had heard about the events that transpired in the Demon Lotus Valley a few days prior. The 7-star sword sect in the Demon Lotus Valley launched a bloody revenge. Duan Ling Tian, the 7-star sword sect's publicly recognized #1 genius, returned with overwhelming power. killing all experts at the 6th level void transformation stage of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in the Demon Lotus Valley by himself. Afterward, all those who were disciples of the 3 great sects of the Azure Forest before the 7-star Sword sect was annihilated by them were also killed one by one. Without exception, when this news first reached the ears of their high-ranking Feihong sect officials, they were still somewhat disbelieving, and for this, they even personally made a trip to the Demon Lotus Valley when they saw the blood-stained crimson earth in the valley north of the Demon Lotus Valley and the dead bodies scattered everywhere, including many high-ranking officials of the 3 great sects of the Azure Forest whom they recognized. They realized that the rumors were not false. The 3 great sects of the Azure Forest were indeed annihilated overnight by someone. From this, they completely believed the rumor, and at the same time, a deep fear of the strength of the perpetrator, Duan Ling Tian, arose from the bottom of their hearts that, of course, they never expected that not long after the battle in the Demon Lotus Valley, Duan Ling Tian, that god of slaughter, would actually intrude into their Feihong sect, and he came with ill intentions, thinking about how they had just clashed with Duan Ling Tian. Their hearts were filled with nothing but regret. If they had known earlier that the sect master's husband and son had such a close relationship with Duan Ling Tian, even if the sect master was seriously injured this time, and even if they had always had objections to the sect master, they wouldn't have dared to target her at this moment. Their hearts were filled with grievance and resentment. Of course, they blamed Meng Ping, the Feihong sect master, even more. You say your family is so familiar with Duan Ling Tian, this godlike figure. Why didn't you say so earlier? Isn't this playing the pig to eat the tiger, clearly setting a trap for us to fall into? You can't set people up like this. Who? Duan Ling Tian saw the fear in the eyes of the old woman in green and the old woman in blue when they looked at him again, and immediately realized that they might have heard about what happened in the Demon Lotus Valley some time ago. That he knew that his task of helping Nie Rong and Nie Yuan, the father and son, had been accomplished today. As long as these 2 old fellows weren't fools, they would definitely not dare to make things difficult for Meng Ping, the Feihong sect master. Again, who? Duan Ling Tian moved, and in a moment, he was by Nie Rong and Nie Yuan's side, raising a hand to take out a pill and place it in Meng Ping's hand. Grandma Meng, this is a 4th-grade great reversion pill, enough to heal your injuries. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile to Meng Ping. Although this was his first time meeting Meng Ping today, since Meng Ping was the wife of old Marquis Nie Rong and the mother of his uncle Nie Yuan, he naturally had to show her enough respect for no other reason than the help Nie Rong and Nie Yuan had given him in the past. Duan Ling Tian had always adhered to a principle in his heart. A drop of kindness received should be repaid with a gushing spring. No, I don't dare, I don't dare. Meng Ping's face flushed when she heard Duan Ling Tian call her grandma, and she quickly shook her head, then took the 4th-grade great reversion pill in her hand. Seeing Meng Ping's loss of composure, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan looked at Duan Ling Tian with puzzled expressions. They weren't fools and naturally noticed Meng Ping's restraint when facing Duan Ling Tian. As if she were facing an extraordinary figure, they suddenly realized that perhaps their understanding of Duan Ling Tian at this moment was still far from enough. After Meng Ping took the pill, she closed her eyes and sat cross-legged in the air to recovered in a moment. Her slightly pale complexion began to turn rosy, and the languid aura around her also continuously strengthened, as if she had been reborn. This is the medicinal power of the 4th-grade Great Reversion Pill. Nie Rong and Nie Yuan's pupils couldn't help but constrict when they saw this scene. The 4th-grade Great Reversion Pill was a pill that only a 4th-grade alchemist could refine, and it was extremely precious. One must know that 4th-grade alchemists were relatively common only in the Great Han Dynasty. Even in the Blackrock Empire, they were extremely rare. As for the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, 4th-grade alchemists were simply nowhere to be found. Not to mention the Scarlet Heaven Kingdom. On the training grounds, the group of Feihong sect female disciples all quieted down, with most of their gazes on Meng Ping, their sect master. They all hoped that Meng Ping would recover and regain control of their Feihong sect. This showed Meng Ping's prestige in the Feihong sect. Of course, a small portion of Feihong sect female disciples' gazes never left Duan Ling Tian. After knowing his identity, they became even more fervent as for the old woman in green and the old woman in blue standing in the distant sky. They remained rooted to the spot, not daring to move. That it wasn't that they hadn't thought of escaping, but that they didn't dare to in front of Duan Ling Tian, a being who could easily kill a 6th-level void transformation stage expert. Could these two small 7th-level void prying stage martial artists escape? Half an hour passed quickly. Meng Ping, who was sitting cross-legged in the air dissolving the medicinal power of the 4th-grade Great Reversion Pill, suddenly stirred, opening her mouth to spit out a mouthful of purplish-black, clotted blood. And after spitting out this mouthful of clotted blood, Meng Ping seemed to have become much more energetic. Whoosh! As the Yuan Li on Meng Ping's body fluctuated, above her head in the void, an ancient horned dragon phantom appeared out of thin air, along with 1,000 ancient mammoth phantoms. 8th-level void transformation stage. Pingu, you've recovered. Nie Rong's eyes widened at this sight, and he asked with a hint of pleasant surprise. Meng Ping smiled and nodded, then looked at Duan Ling Tian, bowing slightly. Thank you, young Master Ling Tian, for bestowing the 4th-grade Great Reversion Pill. The 4th-grade Great Reversion Pill not only healed most of her injuries, but also completely cleared the clotted blood in her meridians. At this moment, she felt as light as a swallow, and the strength of her peak condition had returned. Meng Ping's actions caught Duan Ling Tian somewhat off guard. That he hastily raised his hand, and a gentle Yuan Li vibrated the air, sending out an invisible force that supported Meng Ping. Grandma Meng, you are a relative of Grandpa Nye and Uncle Nye, so you are my relative. You can just call me Xiao Tian, like Grandpa Nye and Uncle Nye do. How dare I accept that? Meng Ping said, somewhat flustered. Thinking of what this purple-clad young man had done some time ago, her heart couldn't help but be shocked, and she still hadn't quite recovered from it. That the powerful 3 great sects of the Azure Forest were destroyed by this frighteningly young man was truly incredible. Mother, you still haven't answered me. How do you know Xiao Tian? Nye? Yuan, who was beside them, asked again. However, this time, Meng Ping still didn't have time to answer Nye Yuan before she was interrupted. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 swift figures flew over, seeing the arrival of the old woman in green and the old woman in blue. Aside from Duan Ling Tian and Meng Ping, who remained calm, Nie Rong and Nie Yuan's expressions changed drastically. However, the next moment, the actions of the old woman in green and the old woman in blue completely stunned them. The 2 old women actually knelt directly in the air before Duan Ling Tian, their withered and aged bodies trembling. Lord Duan Ling Tian, we did not know your relationship with the sect master. Please forgive us. Lord Duan Ling Tian, as long as you are willing to spare me, I am willing to swear by the 99 lightning tribulation that I will never oppose the sect master again in this life. I am willing to. The 2 old women knelt before Duan Ling Tian, speaking somewhat incoherently. In front of Duan Ling Tian. They completely abandoned their pretense as grand elders of the Feihong sect, with only one thought in their minds: to survive at all costs. What are the 2 grand elders doing? Even if Duan Ling Tian is a martial artist above the 8th-level void prying stage, they don't need to be like this, do they? On the training grounds, the group of Feihong sect female disciples were all stunned by the actions of the 2 grand elders. It wasn't just them who were stunned. Nye Rong and Nye Yuan were equally stunned.